So, welcome back to the fifth episode of the Spiralpreneur podcast, the podcast about next generation entrepreneurship. Well, I was looking forward to this episode for quite some time now, I could say, because today we're going to cover a very, very relevant topic for entrepreneurs. And this topic is marketing. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And my guest is Marco Kuijten. He's a lecturer about this topic as well, and also the author of Marketing in the New Economy. Marco, could you maybe shortly introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Yuri, for having me in your podcast. Like you said, I'm a lecturer at Avans University of Applied Sciences. I mainly educate students on market research, marketing, and marketing accountability. But beside that, I'm also a researcher at the lectorate New Marketing, in which we do research on the topic of new marketing. And new marketing is not online or new marketing tools. For us, new marketing is a new perspective, a new paradigm on marketing. What does marketing actually mean for us as marketeers, but also for consumers and society at large?
Okay, and now you actually make me very curious, Marco, because you've got probably the old marketing because you call it the new marketing. But what was for you the occasion to learn more about new marketing in the first place?
Well, actually, it was the main reason why I became a lecturer. Before I was a lecturer, I worked in companies and businesses. And I often was a bit ashamed when I had to tell people at parties that I was a marketeer, because people thought, oh, marketing, you sell stuff, you manipulate us, you advertise and promote stuff we don't need. And I was like, no, that's not what marketing is. Marketing is so much more than advertisement and manipulation and commerce. So I really wanted to contribute to that other perspective on what marketing could be. And what place to do that, better do that than within education, to tell students, young people, what marketing is, what it could be, what it should be. So that was the main reason why I switched from business to education. And that switch was at first pretty hard, because it's really a different world and you have to learn to be a good educationer. But after a while, when at least I think I know how to be a good teacher, I started to work on the marketing perspective, what marketing could be and how it should be. And when a place came vacant in the lectorate New Marketing, I jumped in on that, and that really was a catalyst for my research, for my knowledge on the topic, but also for the development of, for instance, my book, but also our curriculum. That was really a good kickstart for my new marketing perspective.
Yeah, and that's nice to hear your journey about how you eventually got to this topic and to this new perspective, as you call it. And before I directly ask you, Marco, to describe the marketing, I'd like to first take 2 steps back. So the first step would be, of course, marketing. And the second step would be the economy in general. Because how would you describe today's economy?
Well, the 2 things you mentioned there are intertwined in my perspective. For me, marketing is really a child of the economy. And the economy at large dictates what marketing should do. And in the last couple of years, we've seen that the economy is really focused on growth, on financial growth. And that's the biggest objective for a lot of companies. It's a goal in itself. And when you look at that, there was a time when the free market and capitalism was a good tool. It was something the economy and society needed back in the 80s and 70s. That was a tool needed to fix society and to bring prosperity and innovation for a lot of people. But it's like 50 years ago, and the world has changed, and we're still using the same old tool. And I think the tool we're using now, like a free market economy and a capitalist economy, is doing more harm than good for the society that we're in today. It's like when you take a look at your toolbox, you need a hammer to drive a nail into the wall. It's a good tool, but once the nail is in the wall, but you keep bashing it, you will damage the wall. And that's something we're doing at the moment. I think we're using the wrong tool for the wrong reasons, just to have economic growth for a small group of people that will benefit from that growth. And I think we need a new kind of economy that's not growth focused, at least not financial growth focused. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that when you look at the economy, and an economy that dictates we need to grow our economy every year, that's something that marketing has to do. That's an objective of marketing. So marketeers must help companies to grow in order to let the economy grow. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are starting to dislike marketeers, large companies, multinationals, because they feel, they sense, they know those companies, those marketeers, those people are only in it for themselves. They want financial growth because they benefit from it. They don't want what's good for me or what's good for the planet. And a lot of resentment comes from that sentiment, I think. So when you ask, what do you think about the economy? I think we're in the transition to a new economy. We have to, because we see that our world, our planet can follow the financial growth. We keep exploiting Earth, the resources, peoples, the environment. It's a dead-end street, so the economy has to change. And I think more and more people starting to see that, policymakers as well, companies as well, individuals, consumers as well. So I think we're in a transition to a new economy with new rules, new objectives, and that will dictate what marketeers should do in the future. So I think with a changing economy, we're also going to see a changing role for marketing in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'm curious because, for example, big corps, they maybe tend to do something about the people, planet, but also the profit. Then, for example, those startup-preneurs, those entrepreneurs who have a startup, those are still in the starting phase. So growth is probably the most important aspect. Then how would you recommend them, in particular, to also put their focus on marketing already?
Well, I think it's important for startups, for smaller companies, and you see that happening in real life. They can set the bar. They can change the norm on what it is to be a good company, to be a good entrepreneur. And I think that a lot of successful companies didn't have a lot of growth objectives. Growth was never a main target for them to achieve. A lot of successful companies, and we all know the brands like the Patagonia and the Mud Jeans, the Toms, but Tony Chocoloni. But their goal was to be a better type of business, a better type of entrepreneur. And people are attracted to that. They believe in the sincerity and the genuinity of those companies. And they want to identify with those companies. And that's why they are successful, because they have a very strong intrinsic drive or motivation to do better. And people want to join that the change.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons why those companies are very successful, even though they don't have growth as an objective in itself. But also, I think this resetting the norm in the industry. Take, for example, Interface, the floor producer. They changed the norm on how to produce good floor tiles. And they changed the whole industry, like Deso, which is now Target. A lot of companies are following Interface because they are successful, but in doing so, they also adapt their better principles on producing and manufacturing the products that they make and sell.
All right, that's a nice example you give, and I mean it feels kind of counterintuitive. So actually, like not focusing on growth as a company actually has the opposite effect as you would think, because people may be more attracted to it because they think you are more a meaningful brand, for example, in comparison with your competitors. So that's quite interesting. And imagine, yeah, you would be in a very, very competitive market. And how would you defend yourself against competitors who do not focus on the marketing?
Well, I believe in, like I said before, in the drive and the motivation and the intrinsic values that those startups or those companies, those innovators have. And I think when you have a good story and a good product, there is no competition, especially not if it's competition that still lingers in the old economy, which only want to make a lot of money for themselves. You see climate change all around us every day. Everybody experiences the heat drought at the moment, the water shortage. We all feel that climate change is here and is now, and a lot of people don't want to contribute further to the climate change. So if they can make a better choice without having to sacrifice a lot of benefits for themselves, people will make that choice. So if you have a comparable or better product, but made in a sustainable way, and you do you sell those products from a sustainable business model, I think that the choice for consumers will be very easy to make the better decision. And that's why a lot of those companies and those startups are successful. So I don't think that there is competition from price fighters. How do you say it? The companies that sell a lot of products at low prices, those companies will be obsolete in the future.
Wow, okay. And I also heard you mention climate change and other issues. And could you, for clarity purposes, make any connection between marketing and climate change?
Yeah, that connection is very obvious. The main driver of climate change is what we in the Western world, the richest 20%, and that's us too here in the Netherlands, and not everybody, but people with a normal income here in the Netherlands, we are the wealthiest 20% in the world. And what we consume, how we consume it and dispose of it, is the main driver of climate change. So in selling those products and promoting those products that are actually often made very bad, things break after a very short period of time, you can't fix them, you have to throw them away, so there's a lot of garbage and waste, a lot of disposal. all that comes from marketeers and companies that make and sell bad products to make a short-term profit for themselves. And our consumption levels are the main driver of climate change. If we change our consumption patterns here in the Western world, will have tremendous effects. And it's on all kinds of levels. So the clothes that we wear, if we whether or not eat meat, the products, the gadgets and electronics that we buy, and how long we use them, those things have a really big impact.
And please tell me, who is most responsible for this? Would you say the business owner who comes out with the growth goals, or the marketer who helps them accomplish those goals, or the consumer?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and also a very complex one, because obviously people at Big Corp, they're not intrinsic bad people. They don't want to destroy the world and come up with ideas to do exactly that, to destroy the world as fast as possible. It's the system that we're all trapped in. Big Corp must earn enough profit so it can keep their shareholders happy. Marketeers must reach their goals in order to help the company grow. Consumers are always looking for the next kick, the next new thing, the next high, triggered by what marketing does. It's not just one company or one kind of thing. It's a whole system. Everybody has to change, and that's what makes it very difficult, because in a system everything is interconnected. If you step out of the system and do things the other way, but the system remains intact and it does what it used to do, then you're the outsider and nothing changes. So you would have to change the whole system. But how can you do that when everybody is in that system? And that's a really complex question. And that's also the reason why I think that change is going slower than we need it to be.
Yeah, and let's make it more specific then. Most people who are listening to this podcast are solopreneurs, so entrepreneurs without a team. So they often also do the marketing themselves. And what can they do in order to focus more on the marketing?
Yeah, well, I think it's important as an entrepreneur to think about your purpose. And I know purpose is a bit of a wrong out term. How do you say it? It's often used in a wrong way. Sometimes it's associated with greenwashing. But I think as an entrepreneur, you really have to think, what do I want to achieve with my company? What do I want to do? Who do I want to help? Why does my company exist? What does my company contribute to the change that we need? And that's something you have to have very clear for yourself, because it's the raison d'être, the meaning of why a company exists. And from that purpose or your identity, I think you can think on better ways to achieve that goal. If you used to sell products to your customers, you can think on 1,001 other ideas to reach that objective. Products, for instance, by offering products as a service, SaaS, by offering products that last longer, that can be repaired, leasing constructions, maybe offering services. There are a lot of other ways as an entrepreneur to make money than by just selling stuff. And also ask yourself, sorry, who do I want my customers to be? Are you happy if you sell your products to Big Corp, to Big Oil? Who do you want your customers, your partners, your stakeholders to be? I think the partnerships that you have as an entrepreneur are very important for your identity, and they can facilitate and empower your identity. But it can also help you to be a catalyst for your change, to be the change, to reach more people, to make more impact. So I think that's really important to acknowledge as an entrepreneur, that your company is just a one-man show, but you're not in it alone. You are part of a system as well. And together you can achieve a whole lot, I think.
That's a clear answer. And of all those questions you could ask yourself to eventually go down to the basics, to the essence of your business, so you could better give expression to the marketing with your business. From my own experience, as well as the experience from the entrepreneurs which I'm guiding, they are often very busy. And then they probably would ask themselves, like, what is the single most important question I should ask myself, or I should put my focus on in order to take steps within this field?
Yeah, a good one, tough one also. Well, I think the quick fix answer, to be honest, is something of the old economy. Like, oh, we need a quick fix. Let's make a new product, throw a lot of money in a marketing campaign, and sell a lot of those products and make a lot of profit. I think, sure, everybody's busy, but you have to have a long-term perspective on what you want to achieve. And even when you're busy, every day you can make small steps towards that goal. But you have to have a clear focus on what that goal is. I spoke an owner once of piping wholesale business. And he said, well, I want to have a flourishing business. So my children, and when they get old enough, they can take over the business. I can retire and they have a flourishing business. And I was really amazed by that, because I thought, how could you have such a small scope? Like, you want your children to have a flourishing business, but if the rest of the world is going to hell, that's you don't want your children to have a nice world to grow up. You just want them to have a nice business to own. And those perspectives, like as an entrepreneur, how can I help the next generation, perhaps your own children, to live in a flourishing, prosperous world? That's a really big objective, and you can't do that on your own, but you can contribute to that. And if you act by that sort of goals every day a little bit, I think then every step you make, every contribution that you make every day is a part of the bigger goal that you want to achieve. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to have such a perspective on what they want their company to contribute to the future.
Certainly. And I can imagine you as a lecturer, you get the opportunity to contribute to younger people, the next generation entrepreneurs, to be, hopefully, to make those steps and to help them shift their attitudes. And what can you do if you are, for example, not a teacher, to also inspire other people to also make those sustainable steps?
Well, I think everybody that's working on this topic, when I talk to students, a lot of students are really open-minded for the things that I tell them. They just haven't heard them before. They're surprised that, oh, I didn't know how the economy worked, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know there were these alternatives, and I didn't know that you can be a successful business in another way. And I think that's a main problem. A lot of people are willing to contribute. They just don't know how. They don't know the other perspective. They don't know the other story. And I think everybody who's working on sustainability and is working on a better future or a better environment, help people with getting to know the subject, getting to know the choices that they can make, so that they see other perspectives and they can act on that. Because that's really, I think, a big problem, that a lot of people want to do something, but a lot of people don't know what they can do or how they can do it. So if we can help them by making better choices, I think, well, we're talking about a lot of people, you can have a lot of impact in that way.
Okay. So it all starts with awareness, you say?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. And how would you, not necessarily describe, but how would you define the main characteristics of a marketer?
Well, I once stated that marketing is dead, and in the future, we don't need marketeers anymore. Marketing is, the word market is in it. It's something from the old economy, from the market economy, the free market economy. I think in the future, we don't need marketeers, but we need societeers, people who are in it for society. And that means that you have other objectives that you have to work on. For instance, you don't think in markets and profit maximization, but you think in society. How can I contribute as a marketeer or as an entrepreneur or as a company? How can I contribute to society? And then which levels can I contribute on the 3 Ps, the people, planet, profit? How can I make communities? How can I make good communities, prosperous communities, thriving communities? It means thinking instead of short-term gains in long-term gains. So what's in it in the long run? What do we want to contribute as a company or entrepreneur? So I think that those are really a different mindset on what it means to be a marketeer, means on how can we create as much kind of value, different kinds of value for a broader audience in the long term.
Yeah. And probably also you've got to raise your consciousness to be able to shift your focus from market to more collectively the society.
Mm-hmm.
And are there any techniques, activities, things you can do to further stimulate that within yourself?
Well, you say it actually yourself, in yourself. And I think that's really important, because look at yourself. What makes you happy? What do you think important? And I think there are very few people who find it really important to have a fancy watch of a few thousand euros or dollars, to have a Rolex. Yeah, in the short term, that may be really something that you want, but in the long term, yeah, what do you find important? And that's come back to your intrinsic, your identity. What do you think is important? Where do you want to make your contribution? Look into yourself. What matters to you? For me, a game changer was the moment when I had children and I had to start thinking about the future beyond my own life. What kind of future will they have? And I think a lot of people, and it's hard for young people, I've noticed, when I talk to students, they want to make a career, get a lease car, a nice function, a business car that's managing director. But especially when you're getting older, you gain more insights on what you find important. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, really important to acknowledge that the things that you find important are things you want to fight for, you want to work hard for, you really want to make a contribution to it. I think everybody has such a main motivator, but you have to dig deep sometimes in yourself to find it.
Yeah, would you say like, still, if you look deep down at your most important values, your core values, and you actually find out that those are not that inspiring, that your core values are ambition, dominance, passion, and power, those kind of things, which are very much focused on self-expression. And how can you still shift yourself to a more collective focus?
Yeah. Well, I think that there aren't very much people which have that as their main objective. Students say it all the time. When I ask them in the first year, and what do you want to be? I don't know what I want to be, but I want to make a lot of money. Yeah, okay, but that isn't a really good motivator. Or like you said, power. I want to be a managing director or CEO. I don't think that those are very good motivators, because you can make a lot of money, but you have to do a shit job every day, 8 hours a day, to earn that money. Are you going to be happy? No, nobody's going to be happy if they have to do a terrible job for 8 or 10 hours a day in order to get a big salary. It doesn't outweigh one another. So I think everybody, even the people who think, well, I find that Rolex or that CEO title, or that's my main driver, I think that that's really important. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's something you find most important in the whole wide world. But it's what I said before, it's sometimes really hard to find out what your real motivation is. And I think it's also a coming of age thing, that it takes time, it takes some years, some experience. Sometimes you have to walk the wrong path in order to find out that you're on the wrong path, and to go looking for the right path. So yeah, that's it. I think I don't think that there are people that are truly motivated by power, money, wealth.
Or maybe for the moment. So they eventually, by fulfilling these values, those core values, they eventually come to the deeper values, and then they can make an impact.
Yeah, but I think if that's what motivates you, what you should do is try walking some other shoes. If you really want to be a successful businessman or woman and make a lot of money, fine, do that. But try, even for a week, try to do some charity work, or try helping your neighbor who's elderly and can't garden for herself. Just try some things where you're not in it for the money and the power, but where you do something for someone else. Experience that. And you can do that. And if you don't like it, or it gives you a bad feeling, which I can't imagine, but if that doesn't do it for you, well, then okay, then I can't help you. But you should at least try to experience some purpose in your life.
Yeah. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this especially applies for the Western world. Because, for example, some very poor countries with a lot of poverty, they maybe need some other strategies to eventually get to that point.
Yeah, that's right. This is mainly the Western world. It's also mainly the Western world that's focused on growth maximization, on financial growth. And when you look outside the Western world, there is maybe more poverty, but some people are more happy than they are here in the Western world, because they have community, a sense of belonging, a purpose in their life. They are respected within their community. They can help each other. So you can ask yourself the question, which one of us is the poor one?
That's an interesting thought, for sure. And like for marketing or within marketing, you often set KPIs for yourself, key performance indicators, which are often also focused on growth. And as a D-marketer, so the person who is very much focused on the new marketing, and he or she focuses on the people, planet, and also the profit, then what kind of KPIs could be usable for that person?
Well, your main objective, why you are an entrepreneur or what your business objective is, that should be a guideline for your objectives. If you want to take it's a well-known example, but take for instance Tony Chocoloni. If you want to change the chocolate industry, they can have KPIs like how many farmers did we help, how many farmers did we get out of poverty, for instance, how many other companies did we inspire. So it's really depends on your main objective. But I think if you have a main objective that's important to you, your KPIs should be derived from that objective. You have to know for yourself, but also for other people, that you're making progress in reaching your objective.
All right. And imagine you would like to learn more about setting the right objectives. Then what can you do, like besides listening to this episode?
What do you mean? Like how?
Like maybe certain books you would recommend to read, or anything else? Persons, people you like to you recommend to follow?
Well, you wouldn't say it, but in the Netherlands we are pretty ahead of the curve when it comes to the new economy, and we have a lot of thinkers within the Netherlands that are very inspiring and are doing groundbreaking work. Kees Klomp, Kai Morel, Hugh Bobbeldijk, and also Michel Scholten, and a lot of people within the Dutch community that are very on the forefront of the change. So a lot of things are happening here, and I think we are sometimes an inspiration for other countries and other universities and the things that we're doing here. So you can look pretty close at home if you want to look for inspiration within our own country. Let's think. I don't have really concrete tips or books.
Your own book.
Have to look
Marco.
Sorry?
Your own book.
My own book, yeah, it's only in Dutch, but
all right.
For the Dutch readers, yeah, it's really, I think, a good example on how to think, how to change your mindset. Yeah.
And that makes me also curious, like for the people who are listening to this and who actually want to learn more about you, because you also know quite a lot about this topic. How can they best follow you, Marco?
Well, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Everything I do always gets posted through LinkedIn. I'm working on a new book at the moment, so I hope in coming months to finish that. So more on that also on LinkedIn. But also if they want to contact me or have a discussion or something else on the subject, I'm always open for that. So please follow me on LinkedIn. That's my main channel that I use.
Good to know. All right. And would you also like to already spoiler the title of your upcoming book with us?
Well, it is in Dutch, Consumens, but it's about, like I said before, our consumer behavior is really important. How can we alter our consumer behavior, and why is it that we consume as much as we do? So it's an exploration in why we consume, how we consume, but also the effects of our consumption. And I make two scenarios into the future, a bit futuristic scenarios, somewhat extreme scenarios, perhaps. But those two scenarios give a lot of inspiration on how we can also consume in a better way, in a more thoughtful way.
Okay. Sounds interesting, Marco.
Also.
Yeah, certainly. So that would be it then for now. And I'd like to thank you very much for this, for taking the time to answer those questions. Very insightful, at least for me, and probably also for the listeners. So thanks for being here, Marco.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed talking on the subject on your show.
All right. And for the listeners, of course, I'm looking forward to having you on board again and in the next podcast episode. So I'd say till then.